Hello everyone. For the rest of today's lecture, we'll be learning about tabular data format. As I mentioned in the previous lecture, a lot of datasets have tabular data format. We'll be using the list of list data structure extensively to be able to analyze such datasets. In today's lecture, we'll be learning about the CSV file format. We are going to compare CSV format to familiar spreadsheet format. Then we'll be learning the purpose and syntax of CSV file format. Finally, we'll be learning how to read data from CSV files. The reading for this particular material is chapter 16 of Zweigart book. Let's get started by learning basic terminologies associated with spreadsheets. I'm sure all of you are familiar with spreadsheet file format. You would have either used Microsoft Excel or Apple Numbers software to be able to deal with spreadsheets. Spreadsheets allow us to store tabular data. The data is organized using structures called as cells. A vertical stack of cells is called as a column. A horizontal stack of cells is called as a row. You may or may not have a header row. What is a header row? Header row is a special first row which provides descriptive column names for your tabular data. Within your spreadsheet, you're allowed to use different data types like text and numbers. You're also allowed to use different fonts like bold and regular. Within a single spreadsheet file, you can store multiple sheets, meaning you can store multiple tables of data. Let's talk about the spreadsheet file format. The spreadsheet files have an extension of .xlsx. The file format itself is called as binary file format. What is meant by binary file format? The data within spreadsheet is stored using ones and zeros, which are not human readable characters. This implies that you need to have specialized software like Microsoft Excel or Apple Numbers to be able to open and edit spreadsheet files. Whenever you're dealing with binary file format, you cannot use any of the plain text editors or programs that require you to have plain text content to be able to process that particular file. For example, you cannot use the CAT program to display the content of a spreadsheet file. That's because CAT can only understand plain text format and it cannot understand the binary format. What would happen if you were to use the CAT program to display the content of a spreadsheet file? You're going to get a bunch of gibberish characters on the screen. Because of the binary format, it is very tricky for us to be able to write code to read data from spreadsheet files. We need to use specialized modules to be able to do that. That is why we'll be dealing with CSV file format. CSV stands for comma separated values. Let me compare and contrast CSVs with spreadsheets. Just like spreadsheets allow us to store tabular data, CSV files also allow us to store tabular data. We'll be organizing cells of data into rows and columns within the CSV file. Let's talk about the differences between CSVs and spreadsheets. You can only have one table within a CSV file. If you want to store multiple tables of data, you'll have to create multiple CSV files for that. Your CSV files can only hold string data type within the file. We'll be doing a lot of typecasting in order to be able to convert the data into required data type when we move the CSV file data into list of list data structure. There is no way for us to specify things like font, borders, cell size, and so on. Let's talk about the CSV file format. CSV files have an extension of .csv. They have a plain text file format, meaning that you can open your CSV file in any plain text editor like Notepad, TextEdit, Idle, and so on, and you'll be able to both read the content and edit the content of the CSV file using such editors. You can also use the CAT program to display the content of a CSV file because it has a plain text format. It is very easy for us to write code that understands CSV file format. Let's understand the basic syntax of CSV files. On the top, I have a spreadsheet table and the corresponding CSV is displayed on the bottom. For this particular example, the spreadsheet has a header row, so the CSV is also going to have a header row. Each row within your CSV is going to be a line within your spreadsheet file. Within each row, you'll be using cells to represent the actual data. The cells will be separated using commas. Commas are called as delimiters here. Delimiter is the fancy word for saying separator. So we have two different delimiters that we'll have to deal with. One would be newline that delimits one row of the CSV file from the next row. The second would be the comma delimiter, which delimits cells within a single row. Let's go back to the CSV file format so that you can compare the delimiters. As you can see, the first data row here, which contains the values is Heidi and few numbers. You're using comma to separate each of the cell values here. In order to separate the first row from the second row, you'll be using new line as the delimiter. Let's talk about the complication with respect to coming up with our own code for reading data from CSV file. What if within a cell we want to have a new line? Well, new line has a special meaning. That's because it's supposed to be a delimiter between rows, correct? What if we wanted to have a comma within a cell? That is also going to be tricky because comma has a special meaning as it is supposed to be the delimiter between cells. What if a cell contains a quote? And what if we want to use different delimiters like tab in between cells? Those are technically not called as CSV files, but a lot of code that deals with regular CSV file format can also deal with different kinds of delimiters that are used as part of the CSV file format. It's better for us to use a general CSV module which is ready available for us than to write all of this code that processes the CSV data format on our own. That's what we'll be using. We are going to use a module called as CSV. I'll wrap up this video here. In the next video, we'll learn how to read data from a CSV file into a list of list data structure.